France may have ended its colonial empire, but not its control. From Mali to Senegal, West Africa remains trapped in a system built on stolen gold and a currency designed in Paris. This is the story of how France turned liberation into dependence, and why the fight for true freedom still rages on. Please subscribe our channel The Turkish Odyssey. It's free to subscribe. Your support means the world to us and essential to bring more stories. Thank you. Let's go back to our story. Decades after the official end of colonialism, France's influence in West Africa remains profoundly entrenched. This region, rich in resources and human potential, finds itself ensnared in a complex web of economic and political dependence. It is a dependence that often feels indistinguishable from its colonial past. From the visible presence of French military forces to the deep scars left by resource extraction, the signs are everywhere. Protests erupt, flags burn, and the cries for true sovereignty grow louder. This is not merely a historical footnote, it is a living, breathing system of control. The narrative often presented is one of liberation and partnership. Yet, a closer examination reveals a different story. France, it seems, did not truly liberate its former colonies. Instead, it skillfully transformed direct rule into a more insidious form of dependence. This is the story of how liberation became a new form of subjugation. It is the story of gold, blood, and the enduring trap of the CFA Franc. The groundwork for this enduring influence was laid in the late 19th century. European powers, driven by industrial ambition and a thirst for resources, carved up the African continent. France aggressively pursued its share, invading and colonizing vast swathes of West Africa. This brutal expansion was cloaked in the rhetoric of a civilizing mission. French colonizers claimed to bring enlightenment, progress, and order to what they deemed primitive societies. This was a convenient justification for conquest. The reality was far more sinister. The colonial project was built on a foundation of violence, forced labor, and cultural suppression. Indigenous systems of governance were dismantled, local economies were reoriented, and traditional ways of life were systematically undermined. Africans were conscripted into forced labor gangs, building infrastructure that primarily served French interests. Their lands were seized, their resources plundered, and their dignity stripped away. This systematic exploitation was the engine of colonial wealth. Gold, in particular, became a key resource fueling French economic growth. Mines across the region were exploited with ruthless efficiency, their output shipped directly to European markets. This wealth contributed significantly to France's industrialization and prosperity. Specific territories fell under French dominion, including Senegal, Mali, Côte d'Ivoire, Guinea, Burkina Faso, Niger, Togo, and Benin. Each nation bore the brunt of this extractive system. Their natural endowments became France's gain. Beyond gold, other valuable resources were systematically plundered. Vast plantations were established for cocoa, cotton, and peanuts. These cash crops were cultivated for export, enriching French merchants and industries while local populations struggled. The colonial era was not a period of development for West Africa. It was a period of systematic extraction, designed to benefit the colonizer at the expense of the colonized. The legacy of this exploitation continues to shape the region today. The formal end of colonial rule did not halt the flow of resources from West Africa to France. Instead, the mechanisms of extraction simply evolved. Today, the systematic looting continues, perpetuating a stark disparity between the region's wealth and its poverty. Gold remains a primary target, with vast quantities extracted by foreign companies. But the scope of resource exploitation extends far beyond precious metals. Cocoa, a cornerstone of the global chocolate industry, is largely sourced from West Africa. Uranium, vital for France's nuclear energy program, is another critical resource. Niger, one of the world's largest uranium producers, has seen its wealth flow out while its own population lives in extreme poverty. This is a profound injustice. French companies dominate these extractive industries, ensuring that the profits return to Paris. Areva, now Orano, has long controlled uranium mining in Niger. TotalEnergies maintains a significant presence in the energy sector. Compagnie Française de l'Afrique Occidentale, CFAO, a historical trading company, continues to operate extensively across various sectors. These corporate giants are key players in this ongoing economic relationship. The wealth generated from these resources is immense, yet the compensation for African workers and the benefits for local communities are meager. This stark disparity highlights the deeply imbalanced nature of the relationship. It is a modern form of economic subjugation. West Africa is often described as a mine, a seemingly endless source of raw materials. Paris, meanwhile, functions as the vault, where the accumulated wealth is stored and managed. This metaphor perfectly encapsulates the extractive dynamic. The profits from these operations rarely translate into meaningful development for the host nations. Infrastructure remains inadequate, healthcare systems are underfunded, and educational opportunities are limited. The cycle of impoverishment persists. This ongoing resource drain is a critical factor in West Africa's struggle for economic independence. It is a direct continuation of colonial patterns, adapted for the 21st century. The wealth of the land continues to enrich others. Perhaps the most enduring and insidious tool of French control is the CFA franc. Introduced in 1945, this currency was designed to maintain economic ties between France and its colonies. Its influence persists long after independence. Even after West African nations gained nominal sovereignty, the CFA franc remained firmly controlled by the French treasury. This arrangement stripped these nations of their fundamental monetary autonomy. They could not control their own economic destiny. A key requirement of the CFA franc system is that member nations must deposit 50% of their foreign exchange reserves with the French treasury. This effectively means that half of their hard-earned wealth is held in Paris, not in their own central banks. This reserve requirement severely limits the ability of West African nations to manage their own economies. They cannot freely invest their reserves, nor can they use them to stimulate local growth or respond to economic shocks. France also retains the power to veto monetary decisions made by the CFA franc zone's central banks. This gives Paris ultimate control over the currency's value and policy, overriding the sovereignty of independent nations. The currency has been devalued multiple times, most notably in 1994. While presented as an economic adjustment, these devaluations often benefited French exports by making them cheaper for CFA franc zone countries to import. Such devaluations also made West African exports cheaper, but they simultaneously increased the cost of essential imports. This further hindered African economic development and deepened dependence on France. The CFA franc system persists today, used by 14 countries across West and Central Africa. It is a powerful symbol of continued economic subjugation. It represents a direct link to the colonial past. Critics argue that the CFA franc stifles industrialization and regional trade. It forces member states to prioritize exports to France and Europe, rather than fostering intra-African commerce. This limits their economic diversification. The fixed parity with the euro, guaranteed by France, is often cited as a benefit, ensuring stability. However, this stability comes at the cost of flexibility and independent monetary policy. It is a stability that serves French interests. The CFA franc is not merely a currency, it is a mechanism of control. It ensures that West African economies remain tethered to France, limiting their growth and perpetuating a cycle of dependence. It is a trap. Beyond economic levers, France maintains its influence through a significant military presence across West Africa. Bases in countries like Mali, Niger, and Côte d'Ivoire serve as strategic outposts. These forces are often presented as partners in security. However, this military presence frequently extends to intervention in internal affairs. France has a long history of intervening in coups, influencing elections, and suppressing uprisings. The goal is often to maintain friendly regimes. These interventions are framed as efforts to promote stability or combat terrorism. Yet, they often serve to prop up leaders who align with French interests, regardless of their democratic legitimacy or popular support. The 2011 NATO intervention in Libya, heavily pushed by France, is a stark example of unintended consequences. The destabilization of Libya unleashed a torrent of weapons and fighters across the Sahel region. This directly fueled the rise of extremist groups. This destabilization then provided a pretext for increased French military involvement in the region. What began as an intervention in Libya spiraled into a prolonged military presence across the Sahel. It created a self-fulfilling prophecy. The presence of French troops and the perceived meddling in internal affairs have ignited widespread anti-French sentiment. Protests have become increasingly common and vocal across West Africa. Images of French flags being burned are a powerful symbol of this growing resentment. Chants of "Down with France" and "Down with CFA" echo through the streets of major cities. The people are demanding true sovereignty. This rising tide of anti-French sentiment is a direct challenge to France's enduring grip. It reflects a deep-seated frustration with economic exploitation, political interference, and military presence. The people are demanding change. The narrative of France as a benevolent partner is crumbling. A new generation of West Africans is acutely aware of the historical and ongoing injustices. They are demanding an end to the cycle of dependence. The future of West Africa hinges on its ability to break free from these historical chains. It requires a reassertion of sovereignty, a reclaiming of resources, and a dismantling of the systems that perpetuate dependence. The struggle for true liberation continues. They took the gold. They gave the franc. And they stayed in power. France's colonial legacy didn't end with flags, it lives on in banks, bases, and broken promises. Subscribe for episode 4, Britain in Kenya, Mau Mau, Tea and Bloodshed. Like, comment, and share if you believe Africa deserves true independence. Thank you for watching. See you in the next adventure.